Symbolism matters in these elections. So look at where the two men vying to lead Turkey chose to close their campaigns. For Erdogan, it was Istanbul's Hagia Sophia, a reminder of how the president has brought religion back into government. In a controversial move, he reverted this building to a mosque. It was made a museum by this man, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the modern Turkish state. And it was his mausoleum that opposition leader Kemal Kilicdaroglu chose for his final stop. He's promised to return Turkey to those founding secular values. In a country that no longer allows free speech, the ballot box is sacred. Voter turnout is always high. Even in the areas devastated by February's earthquake, they carry their grief and ballot papers. People who have been displaced from their homes bussed back to vote. 6 very different parties have united behind Kilicdaroglu. The only common ground is unseating Erdogan.
We've all missed democracy a lot. We all missed being together. We all missed hugging each other. Starting from now, spring will come to this country and will continue forever.
That might be optimistic, with a highly polarised society and failing economy. And if they win, how united the coalition remains is a big concern. Another concern is if Erdogan loses, will he go without a fight? He's promised he will, but with a tight result expected, a recount or second round is possible.
I hope that once all the votes have been counted, for our country, for our nation, for our democracy, a good future for my country, my people, and for Turkish democracy.
For his critics, it is Turkish democracy that is on the ballot, and many fear if Erdogan wins, it'll cement authoritarian rule.
Well, before we came on air, I spoke to Aslı Adin Taşbaş, who's a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution and is currently in Istanbul. I began by asking her how close she thought this election was going to be.
Elections are open to surprises, and President Erdogan has been very successful in campaigning for the past 20 years. But I think some things feel different, that's for sure. Perhaps, a moment for change, and that maybe the majority of population feel that it is time for change.
There's obviously a risk, though, as well, that this election could be stolen and that Erdogan could in some way try to cling on to power, isn't there?
Well, it's interesting because people here in Turkey feel more confident about the results, that there won't be major fraud. They complain about irregularities. And when you vote, for example, Erdogan is the first guy on the ticket. I have been talking to opposition and they feel like they have a very competent monitoring system. Don't forget, this country has been having multi-party elections since 1946. So they've developed a competitive monitoring mechanism. So here in Turkey, the worry about fraud is on the day of election is less.
So if Kilicdaroglu does triumph, he couldn't be more different from Erdogan, really. How will Turkey and indeed its Western allies feel the change?
First off, they're very unprepared for that prospect in Washington or in Brussels or elsewhere in Europe. I think people just assume Erdogan is this guy who wins elections and that one way or another he'll manage to hold on to power. But to your point about the two personalities, no two men could be more different. Kilicdaroglu, I had a chance to cover him back when I was a journalist, but also later on interviewed him as an analyst. And soft-spoken social democrat, a compromiser, as opposed to the more macho, charismatic Erdogan, who has a different effect on his audience. Basically, Kilicdaroglu is positioning himself as Turkey's Joe Biden. He's not positioning himself as a version of Erdogan.
And so how about relations with the West? Because obviously he's pledged to drop opposition to Sweden joining NATO and to push again for EU membership talks to start. How would the West feel this difference immediately?
Well, I think that Turkey returning to rule of law in this age where the primary feature of the current global order or disorder is this contestation, this fight between democracy and autocracy. And Turkey, a hefty, big country on the edge of Europe, switching sides from autocracy to democracy would in itself be important, and I think would really open a lot of doors.
And finally, if change doesn't happen, Erdogan clings on, the implications then?
I think that people will lose hope about possibility of change. If I think he wins again, it might become more institutional. The other issue is we would see more of a capital flight and brain drain. That's already happening on some level. Lots of Turks are seeking employment outside Turkey, particularly the professional class. I think it would be hard to stop that, provide incentives not for people not to go if he was to win again.
Aslı Aydın Taşbaş, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.